The mystery behind Will Byers' kidnapping has been one of the biggest unsolved questions in Stranger Things ever since the show started. Even though fans have spent years debating theories and trying to understand why Will was taken in the first place, the show never gave a clear explanation in the earlier seasons. Only when Stranger Things 5 takes us back into the past and shows us more about Vecna's origins and intentions do we finally get a clearer picture. And when the same thing starts happening to Holly Wheeler and other kids in Hawkins, it becomes obvious that there is a pattern behind all these disappearances. It is no longer just a random act of a monster dragging a child into the Upside Down. There is a deeper plan, a darker motive, and a horrifying truth that has been slowly building up from season 1 to season 5. When you put all the hints, clues, and new reveals together, the explanation becomes much more terrifying than anything anyone predicted. When Stranger Things first introduced Will Byers, he was described as a quiet and sensitive kid who liked spending time with his friends, drawing, playing D&D, and avoiding trouble. But the moment he vanished on his way home from Mike's house, nothing in Hawkins remained the same. Over the years, we discovered monsters, Gates, Demogorgons, shadow monsters, mind flayers, and of course, Vecna, the real villain hiding behind everything. But what remained blurry for a very long time was this: why Will, out of all the kids in Hawkins, why did Vecna choose him as the first target in Stranger Things 5? As the story circles back to Will's trauma and we see flashbacks of what truly happened to him inside the Upside Down, things suddenly start fitting together. We understand not just how he survived, but why he was chosen for the experiment. Vecna was not just hunting for random victims. He was testing something, he was building something, and Will was his starting point. The show makes it clear that Henry Creel became Vecna after 11 defeated him and pushed him into the Upside Down. Once he transformed, he developed a purpose. He wanted to create a world ruled by him, powered by him, shaped by him. But he soon realized he couldn't do it alone. He needed an army. But not just any army. He needed minds he could easily control. Adult minds are harder to manipulate because adults already have strong emotional boundaries, strong self-identity, and a sense of logic. But children, especially emotionally fragile or lonely children, are different. They are more vulnerable. They feel things more intensely. They don't know how to explain their fears, sorrows, or doubts to anyone. Vecna realized he could take advantage of these emotional cracks. And that is where kids like Will, Holly, and others come in. When Joyce repeatedly talked about Will being a sensitive kid, she was unknowingly describing the exact type of child Vecna was searching for. Someone with emotions so raw and deep that their mind becomes easier to invade. Will was going through many struggles even before the supernatural events started. He was trying to figure out his feelings, especially the confusing emotions he had for Mike, and didn't know how to express any of it. He felt different, alone, and sometimes left out even among his own friends. His father was not present in his life, and his mother, though loving, was caught up in work and stress. He had no safe space to open up emotionally. This type of vulnerability creates an entry point for Vecna. That is why Will became the first target and the first real experiment of Vecna's hive mind plan. Stranger Things 5 shows flashbacks where Vecna attaches a vine-like creature into Will's mouth, connecting him directly to the hive mind. This was not just torture or kidnapping, it was experimentation. Vecna wanted to see if a child's mind could be reshaped, controlled, and connected to his network. Will was the test subject. The experiment worked, which is why even after his rescue, Will continued to feel the presence of the mind flayer, sense Vecna's return, and experience chills on the back of his neck. His connection was never broken because Vecna never intended to let go. What was the beginning of a long-term plan that Vecna kept developing in silence while everyone assumed the danger was over. When Holly Wheeler becomes the next major target in season 5, the pattern becomes crystal clear. Holly is shown as a quiet child who often escapes into books, avoids confrontation, and struggles with her own inner emotions. She is bullied by Derek at school, constantly hears her parents fighting at home, and lacks real emotional support from her siblings who are busy with their personal lives. This emotional loneliness makes her the perfect target for someone like Vecna. He approaches her through Mr. What's-It, a creature disguised as a friend, offering her the comfort and attention she desperately needs. Just like Will, Holly unknowingly walks into Vecna's trap because her emotional world is full of cracks he can slip through. In season 5, we also learn that Vecna needs a total of 12 kids to complete his plan. Will was number 1. Holly and other missing kids slowly join the list. Vecna is creating a hive mind where each kid becomes a node in a massive psychic network. Once connected, they can share powers, share visions, and even share parts of Vecna's consciousness. The shocking twist is that this hive mind is two-way. This means that just as Vecna can access their minds, the kids can also access aspects of Vecna's power if they learn how to use it. This is how Will manages to take control of Demogorgons in a critical moment, surprising even Vecna. This twist shows that children, despite being emotionally vulnerable, have strong inner strength and the ability to resist corruption. Vecna expected obedience, but what he gets is rebellion, which may eventually lead to his downfall. The kidnapping of Holly and the other kids is not random. Vecna is trying to create an army of psychic soldiers who can help him break into the human world completely. Each kid connected to the hive mind increases his power and influence. If his plan succeeds, there will be 12 versions of Vecna, each with similar abilities, all connected to one central consciousness. It would become impossible for the people of Hawkins to fight against 12 superpowered beings. That is why the emotional vulnerability of kids matters. He wants minds that won't question his authority and won't know how to push him out. But as the story shows through Will and Max, he underestimates the inner courage and resilience that children naturally have. He forgets that the same sensitivity that lets him access their minds also gives them a strong emotional core that fights back harder than he expected. One of the most interesting parts of the story is how Will's journey becomes a key turning point. Because he was Vecna's first experiment, he has more understanding of how the hive mind works. He can feel Vecna's movements, sense his emotions, and track the changes in the upside down. This becomes extremely important for the group's strategy because Will becomes like a human antenna connected to both worlds. But it also puts him in danger because Vecna wants to regain control over him. Holly too becomes important because her mind is trapped in Vecna's psychic maze along with Max, who also exists in a strange limbo between life and death. Vecna uses these mind prisons to keep his victims emotionally trapped, confused, and dependent on him. But the moment Holly meets Max inside the mind prison, the balance shifts. Max helps Holly understand that they are trapped and must find a way to fight back. Vecna's plan becomes clearer by the end of episode 4 when Will realizes that the hive mind gives him the ability to push back. When he channels Vecna's own power to control Demogorgons and save his friends, it proves something very important. Vecna's greatest weapon can also become his greatest weakness. The connection that he thought would make him unstoppable ends up giving the children the chance to fight him using his own strength. It becomes the perfect setup for his ultimate defeat in the final episodes. In the end, the reason why Vecna kidnapped Will, Holly, and the others is simple but terrifying. He wants to build an army of children whose emotions he can manipulate and whose minds he can control. He needs their unstable feelings, their confusion, their loneliness, and their fears to break into their minds and use them as vessels for his power. But what he failed to understand is that these children, because they feel so deeply, also have the strongest hearts. And it is this emotional strength, friendship, love, loyalty, and courage that will eventually turn the tide against him. Vecna's biggest mistake was assuming that vulnerability equals weakness. But the story proves the opposite. Vulnerability is what makes humans stronger, and this truth is what will lead to Vecna's defeat when the final battle comes.